Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the incredibly high-stakes, ideological clash that's actually driving the modern AI race. We're going to center our focus on DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis and his deeply personal, lifelong quest to solve the universe's most profound mysteries. Because, if you really want to understand why artificial intelligence is developing the way it is today, you absolutely have to understand the people building it.
Now listen to this totally wild quote from Hassabis. When you picture a tech CEO, you usually think about profit margins, right? Or maybe the newest consumer app. But for Hassabis, creating artificial intelligence is so much more than just writing code or shipping a shiny new product. For him, it's a quasi-spiritual quest. He looks at the physical world, how simple atoms can somehow form solid tables or conscious brains, as this screaming mystery that desperately demands to be decoded. And AI? Well, AI is simply the tool he's building to crack that code.
So, let's kick things off with part 1. Decoding the screaming mystery. We're going to look at how a childhood chess prodigy and neuroscience PhD came to the conclusion that intelligence itself is the ultimate foundational tool required to understand absolutely everything else in the universe. To really get inside Hassabis's head, we've got to look at this classic principle from the legendary physicist Richard Feynman. What I cannot build, I do not understand. Hassabis really took this to heart. He believed the only way humanity could truly understand human intelligence was to actually build it from scratch. This core philosophy is exactly what prompted his major career pivot. He literally walked away from a highly lucrative career designing hit video games, games like Theme Park and Republic: The Revolution, just to found DeepMind back in 2010. And honestly, this is exactly what makes Hassabis such a uniquely fascinating tech founder. We're talking about a fiercely competitive scientist driven purely by curiosity. His colleagues even say he has this magpie mind, constantly snatching up random insights from casual conversations and storing them away for later. He even intentionally chose the academic, intellectual vibe of London over the traditional Silicon Valley hustle. He wanted to build an infinity machine to process reality, not just launch another startup caught up in tech bros soap operas.
But of course, moving into Section 2, the great AI race, we see that this pure academic idealism just couldn't exist in a vacuum forever. It inevitably slammed into the hyper-competitive, incredibly high-stakes reality of the tech industry, sparking a frantic race that nobody could really contain.
It's a complete night and day difference between the two heavyweights defining this era of AI. On one hand, you've got Hassabis, the serious, science-driven PhD and recent Nobel laureate who views AI as a tool for uncovering empirical truth. On the other hand, you have OpenAI's Sam Altman, a college dropout and basically the ultimate Silicon Valley networker. He's a master at raising colossal amounts of capital and shipping slick consumer products. It is a fundamental clash of worldviews.
And that massive clash completely dictated their business models. You've got Google and DeepMind acting as the hyperscaler. They're backed by massive infrastructure, bottomless pockets, and they take a hedged approach, exploring multiple AI pathways all at once. Plus, they move a bit slower to protect their established reputation. Pitted against them are venture-backed startups like OpenAI and Anthropic, who placed highly concentrated, all-in bets on language models. They are highly agile and totally willing to ship products fast, even when they're imperfect.
Now, this intense rivalry even roped in Elon Musk early on. Back in 2014, Musk desperately tried to buy DeepMind just to stop it from falling into Google's hands. During a pitch where Musk was arguing his SpaceX rockets were the most important technology because they could save humanity by taking us to Mars, Hassabis actually rebuffed him with this incredible mic drop moment. He pointed out the inescapable reach of superintelligence, basically telling Musk, hey, if AI goes wrong on Earth, it's just going to master spaceflight and follow you right to Mars. So, despite fending off acquisitions, securing Google's massive compute power, and having a multi-year head start, DeepMind seemingly missed the biggest consumer AI moment of the entire decade. Which brings us to Section 3, the language blind spot. So, the million-dollar question we have to ask here is, why did a brilliant neuroscientist and his world-class team take so long to capitalize on the transformer architecture? That's the underlying tech that makes modern chatbots possible. I mean, OpenAI took the transformer, which ironically was invented at Google, and sprinted with it. Why didn't DeepMind? Well, the answer actually stems from Hassabis's deep roots in neuroscience and his strict adherence to something called the grounding problem. For years, the prevailing theory was that text alone is basically just a system of abstract symbols. The assumption was that you could never teach a machine actual intelligence or a true understanding of the real world without it physically interacting with that world through embodiment or some kind of physical simulation. To really picture this, think about an interview Hassabis did in a London pub with his biographer. They talked for over 30 hours, and at one point, Hassabis literally picks up a glass from the table to demonstrate his early thought experiments. He genuinely believed that to understand concepts like weight, gravity, or fragility, an AI couldn't just read about it on Wikipedia. It had to literally experience the physical sensation of dropping a glass. But then, boom, the whole industry gets flipped on its head. Large language models proved this assumption spectacularly wrong. How? By successfully ingesting and learning from approximately 14 trillion words scraped right off the internet. It turns out, you don't actually need to physically drop a glass if you have processed every single piece of human text ever written about dropping a glass.
And this massive data crunch revealed a pretty shocking, almost philosophical truth to Hassabis. He used to think human experience was just infinitely varied, but it turns out 14 trillion words are actually enough to capture the vast majority of our behavioral possibilities. Like he noted, quoting King Solomon, human variety has a limit. There really is nothing new under the sun. The text was actually enough to ground the AI. Recognizing this incredible, world-eating power of data and models, we arrive at Section 4, Science, Safety, and Survival. It's time to weigh the ultimate legacy of DeepMind, its triumphant scientific breakthroughs balanced right against its terrifying existential anxieties. When you track the history, it is wild to see how DeepMind's pure early idealism got swallowed up by a fiercely escalating arms race. They start in 2010 with this incredibly pure mission. They get acquired in 2014. Then, by 2015, OpenAI is launched specifically to compete with them. This relentless pressure pushed DeepMind to definitively prove that AI could be a massive benefit to humanity, which finally culminated in the release of AlphaFold in 2020. And man, what a massive vindication AlphaFold turned out to be. It literally solved a 50-year-old grand challenge in biology by predicting the 3D structures of proteins. This wasn't just another hallucinating chatbot. This was hard proof of Hassabis' original vision that AI could act as a telescope for the mind, driving actual tangible medical and climate discoveries. And of course, it rightfully earned him a Nobel Prize. Yet, behind closed doors, things were incredibly tense. Friction over the safety and oversight of these powerful models with Google's corporate brass got so heated that Hassabis actually orchestrated a secret plan called Project Mario. He even secured a $1 billion pledge from Reid Hoffman to potentially spin DeepMind entirely out of Google just to ensure better safety governance. Ultimately, though, Hassabis chose uninterrupted science and access to Google's massive compute power over years of messy legal battles. And his worries about safety definitely weren't new. In fact, back in 2015, he tried to bring his rivals together in a collaborative safety tent. He presented DeepMind's progress at a safety summit hosted by Elon Musk. But that brilliantly well-intentioned move completely backfired on him. Instead of fostering collaboration, the attendees realized just how incredibly well DeepMind's AI was working, got totally spooked, and launched OpenAI just months later, locking in the exact race Hassabis wanted to avoid in the first place. So where does that leave our visionary today? Well, Hassabis fully acknowledges now that AI safety is a massive collective action problem. One safe lab doesn't really matter if the others are being reckless, right? It's an issue that only governments can effectively enforce. Yet, despite the cutthroat race, the geopolitical tensions, and that incredibly seductive sweetness of discovery that continually drives researchers forward, he maintains his hope. He simply stated at the end of his interviews, "I'm optimistic still." As we wrap up this explainer, the Oppenheimer parallels in this story are just undeniable. And it leaves us with one incredibly chilling question to chew on. As the Infinity Machine boots up, and this race accelerates way beyond any single person's grasp, can a well-intentioned scientist actually control the fate of a world-changing technology? It's arguably the defining question of our time. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.